Next on Worcester News Tonight, candidates for this upcoming primary election weigh in on early voting. Plus, Rutland Police showing off their newest officer and his special set of skills he brings to the department. Good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm Brittany Schaefer. Election season is right around the corner and the city of Worcester is entering its third season of early voting. It's aimed to increase the number of voters by making the process more convenient, and according to statistics released by the city, Worcester's voters' numbers are increasing.
A big success.
Early voting is in its third year in Worcester, and the city says it's working. According to the Election Commission, voter turnout increased by 4% from 2012 to 2016. In its first year, 16% of people voted early.
Just a great way to spread democracy.
The primary race is heating up among Democrats running for state representative in the 17th Worcester District, and the candidates all support early voting.
I am all for early voting.
It's a great success.
Even if I wasn't a candidate, I would be, in support of early voting.
Candidate Stu Loosemore says the main goal of early voting is increasing convenience and participation.
There are some people that can't make it to the polls on election day for whatever reason. Work schedule, childcare, travel, transportation. You start to create more days so people can go and vote. You can increase participation.
It allows citizens to participation in government. It gives folks more time to vote.
If you're someone like myself who's registered to vote in the 17th Worcester District, I can go over to the 13th Worcester District over where Worcester State is and cast my ballot.
According to the city, 22% of voters in the state took advantage of early voting in 2016's presidential election.
It's nice to see Massachusetts moving forward when so many states in the country are moving backwards on voting rights.
New legislation signed by Governor Charlie Baker will lift the ban on abortions in Massachusetts. The Nasty Woman Act comes as a response to the fear of the historic Roe v. Wade decision being challenged. The bill was introduced by Worcester Democrat Harriet Chandler, who says this is something long overdue. Our Cam Jandro has the details.
On Beacon Hill Friday, Governor Charlie Baker signs the Nasty Woman Act, repealing the state's 173-year-old law banning abortion.
It doesn't mean that you have to have an abortion, but it gives the woman the right to make a decision that is best for her and the unborn child.
Also repealed were bans on adultery, as well as restricting contraception to only married women. Executive Director of the YWCA of Central Massachusetts, Linda Cavioli, says it was important to change the laws should Roe v. Wade be appealed or challenged.
It will revert to state laws, and if we have these archaic laws on the books in the state, we'll be governed by those.
However, the legislation wasn't unopposed. The Catholic Action League of Massachusetts describing it as hasty, histrionic, gratuitous, but unsurprising. Senator Harriet Chandler hopes the new law can change the perception of opponents.
I hope they will respect a woman's right to choose and a woman's right to oversee her own body.
For Senator Chandler, the Nasty Woman Act is something she's been attempting to pass for years.
Reproductive rights and women's health was one of the major reasons I got involved in running for the legislature in the first place.
According to Planned Parenthood, more than 70% of Americans support abortions. Cavioli hopes the signing can serve as a precedent for the rest of the country.
I would hope that states and legislators and women's advocates would take a look at their own laws and see what would be at risk for them.
Cam Jandro, Worcester News Tonight.
Tornado cleanup continues in Douglas. Highway Department and emergency management crews were out again today picking up the pieces and say there's days out of work left. Our Chandler Walsh has more.
Douglas Highway Department crews went back to work Friday dealing with the aftermath of a tornado.
We probably got a week's worth of work down there.
Residents and cars can now pass through Maple Street, but crews are removing truckloads of debris.
You see the trees that are broken off. We've got to cut all those trees down, get them to the ground so they're not a hazard to the residents there.
A messier scene than the roads, homes in the area of Maple and Monroe Streets. The town says about 15 properties are affected.
Which right now is the major leftover nemesis of this whole storm. Yards are still covered with debris and downed trees, the force of the tornado showing in this yard where a large rock uprooted with this oak tree.
It's not something people were expecting. It's cost money.
With the help of Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency, the town was able to call in volunteer group Team Rubicon to assist in restoration. The team of first responders and military veterans will clean up private property not covered by insurance and are only called in for significant weather events.
They're here going house to house to assess the damage and see exactly what they can bring to the table for the homeowners and checking with the homeowners to see if they'd like the help.
Fire Chief Kent Vinson says Team Rubicon will bring the relief residents need.
It's humid. There's a lot of debris. So it's, for a couple of two or three people, it's not an easy job.
Chandler Walsh, Worcester News Tonight.
The former Edgemere drive-in property in Shrewsbury has sat vacant for 20 years. This week, the town took a step towards future development. There is a mixed-use project planned to be built on the land with retail and residential units. Assistant Town Manager Kristen Law says Market Basket is interested in coming to the property, which would include stores and restaurants and up to 250 apartments and townhouses. Earlier this week, Town Selectmen signed a memorandum of agreement between the landowner and the town.
It's really a gateway from the town of Shrewsbury into the city of Worcester. So we'd really like to see the property redeveloped. It's at an intersection of Lake Street and Route 20, a very prominent intersection, and it's always good to see vibrancy coming up in that area.
Law says the town is now applying for the MassWorks application with the state to see if they will receive funding for transportation improvements, as well as waiting for the developer to come forward with local and state permitting, which they will review. The Rutland Police Department welcoming its newest member, K9 named Cooney. It's the department's first ever four-legged officer, and he's expected to play an important role. Our Rosalind Flaherty has the story.
It's the Rutland Police, the K9. Come out now, the dog will find and bite you. Last warning.
Rutland Police K9 Cooney searches and locates a suspect during a demonstration.
Show me your hands. Put your hands in the air. Do it now.
This 16-month-old German Shepherd is the newest officer at the department. He just completed training to become a patrol dog with his handler, Officer Matthew Finuccio.
It's pretty intense training. It's every day, day in and day out. Many hours before and after.
Cooney is the department's first K9 and is certified in area searches, article searches, and locating missing people or suspects. Chief Nick Monaco says they needed a K9 because it can be difficult to wait for help from another department.
We have a school in town that's a residential school for kids with behavioral disorders, a lot of kids with autism, and we've done a lot of tracks for missing children, and it's going to be very helpful to have our own dog.
Good boy.
Cooney was named after Rutland police officer Sean Cooney, who tragically passed away in 2012. The program was funded by a $25,000 grant from the Stanton Foundation.
It's paid for the retrofit of a police car, it's paid for a kennel at the officer's house, it's paid for the dog, all the vet bills, everything that goes into it, so not a dime was spent by the town.
Cooney lives with Officer Finuccio, and he says the two have a great relationship. He says Cooney knows when it's time to be a regular dog and when it's time to work.
He actually is, in my opinion, probably the perfect dog because he has that switch, and as soon as you turn it on, he can be what you'd expect a police dog to be, but before then, he's sociable.
Rosalind Flaherty, Worcester News Tonight.
The town of Millbury hosting the 2018 Massachusetts Little League State Finals. The game's kicking off Thursday night and continuing through the weekend. The state's top 4 Little League teams are competing at Thomas Morey Park on Washington Street. Friday night, it was Westboro versus Medford. Millbury Little League President John O'Brien says it's a big deal for the small town and everyone gets involved.
It's been a great honor for Millbury and the Little League. What we try to do is show off Millbury, the town. We got them to play in. We got them to buy in from the beginning. The police chief is actually walking around the field here today. All right? The fire chief is driving at one of the shuttle buses, taking people back and forth. So it's been truly an honor to be chosen. Our field's in immaculate condition. Everybody loves playing here. We couldn't be happier to have all these folks here.
O'Brien expects around 1,000 people to attend the championship game this Sunday at 2 p.m. The winning team will compete in the New England Regionals in Bristol, Connecticut.